My name is Micaiah Stevens. Welcome to game design number 11. I work in a game for Hamlet. Should be working on a game for Hamlet, for Hamlet, for Haven Studios. It's available on Steam. Anyway, so we're talking about the introduction. We're going to be talking about this game design number 11, which is called FTL School. So if you don't know what FTL is, you're going to have to go to school to figure it out. So anyways, we're doing a little bit more code heavier. Oh, are we? No, I guess maybe not. Oh, yeah, we are. Hopefully. Anyways, I didn't get that set up. Another kind of talk about is Weekend Warrior. It's still the weekend for me, even though it's usually post Sunday morning. After church, I tend to get right back at it. But anyway, so we just worked on this project on the weekend. We thought it was really cool. So let's talk about FTL. So what is FTL? Well, FTL is faster than light. It's made by Subset Games. There's the link for them. They also make an awesome game called Into the Breach. I really enjoyed the game. So basically FTL is on the, let's see, how can I read this? It's been a little, okay, so on the left we have people. There's humans and aliens and various energy things. On the bottom we sort of have our ship. It has power, power. And then you can distribute the power based on what you think is needed. The red sort of is oxygen. You can see that there's basically pathways through for people to go. You can put people in these stations. If they're in the block, they're in the station sort of thing. And then the same thing for the enemy ships has sort of the same kind of things. And then you use weapons and various stuff like that. So it's basically FTL. It's called Fast and Light. It's kind of a board game. We've been watching Resbot. Sorry. Been watching a lot of his. He's talked about the fact it was an old board game, which is what he remembers. But FTL is kind of the game that I played and sort of thought about it. And anyway, so there's a lot of inspirations coming from that. So we decided why not. Let's see. We're on to the demo of the project, and then we're going to be talking about the next steps. So we have this little project we worked up over the weekend. This is kind of the second iteration of this sort of idea. It's basically kind of like meant to be like a RTS sort of overhead sort of view. Some of the angles are a little bit trickier. Anyways, you can see on the top right, we just have this information panel. It's just telling you. I guess I didn't get the once the tile goes off the screen, it should disappear. Anyways, it's a little. So there's the dock area over here, and then you can go and you can select. There's a pilot area. We have this thing called utility. It's just kind of meant to be a generic area, and then there's this engine. You can sort of see that the engines are hopefully on the back of the ship. It's just a modular ship design. You can also I don't think we've activated the wings, but anyway. So and then also we have our little Honeta free space people here. So you can actually you used to be able to select the unit. So we're kind of redoing a lot of this. Anyway, so the big core feature of this is the fact that you can click on these little pieces, which gives you this this area that is sort of encapsulated the area of the piece, and then you can also turn it back on. There's a little bit of cooldown, so it doesn't spam. But it's kind of this general idea that it's like FTL-like in that you have modular pieces you can sort of build eventually is kind of the idea. And then you, I was kind of thinking of it a little bit like, a little bit like a Prison Architect, but maybe for a space game. That's kind of why it's called FTL Schools. Kind of think on this idea. This is the dock area. It's the name dock, and the characters can roam around, and then you can you build this dock area. I'm not sure how Prison Architect would be, but then I was kind of thinking about this idea of you build out, you put down stations and do stuff like that. Right now it's just meant to be a test of various systems, and Resbot has a very similar sci-fi sort of game. His is done in non-Unity, which seems pretty cool because his plan is to have thousands of agents, or excuse me, thousands of AI units running around, and that's always seems like something really awesome for me. So, anyways, we're just trying to get the technology set up. It's kind of interesting. Uh, yeah, there's there's quite a few. Oh, maybe that's probably, but yeah. Yeah, like I don't. I guess we're not going to talk about that because I'll get in a sidetrack of Unity, and when you look at all this code, it's nothing to do with me. I mean maybe it is, but anyway. So we're going to be talking about the scene a little bit. You know, when doing our tile entity game, it seems like this is like it's a thousand tiles. Like that's nothing compared to what we're trying to do. But the real thing in here is if we go out of is what we're trying to do is set this up as this spaceship right here, uh, and we sort of had to change it a little bit. But anyway, so the spaceship controls the area, and I think if I turn off the mesh render, oh, what happened? Excuse me. For the hull. I'm not sure what it's called, hull. But if we turn off the mesh render, we get this black image, and this image is sort of this placeholder for where, and this is actually a separate piece of the puzzle. So we have this game object that is scaled at 7 by 7, which is kind of and it's rotated 90 by -90 to get it to sort of land on the that's kind of how we like to view things as. Or it might be rotated wrong. Anyways, yeah, I think it is rotated wrong, but that's something we need to work on next. Normally we like Y to be positive, and then Z is, which is kind of what we'll be talking about a little bit here. But anyway, so the idea is that this actually has to be two different pieces for various reasons. If I put a canvas in here, it has to scale differently. So let's talk about the canvas a little bit, because that's kind of the main portion of what this is trying to do. So this ship is part of okay, so let's go to the world that's called the world interior canvas. It's a 100 by 100 canvas right now. I guess it's 1,000 across. Anyway, so it's set up as world space. It has a UI camera attached, and then it has various this ship interior viewer. I guess it's one of the main, and then it has this tile piece right here, which is under we have this prefabs object we like to create that's sort of, and then under the ship we create the same sort of width and height of the ship as the same thing, and then the dock is a I guess the dock is, it doesn't really matter. It's now it's just a placement of the thing, so it's at 4, -4. That's so the dock, and you can sort of see this dock piece right here, which is a 30 by 30 dock piece, and then it's just a view area. And then anyway, so our tiles are just a box glider is kind of what we went with, and then we have this UI tile geo, which is sort of just a way to sort of separate out the logic, and then it has this image piece that doesn't have the raycast. I was trying to raycast on the image, but it wasn't working out as well because of how we're doing the physics raycast, which is actually pretty simple. Anyway, so let's jump right into some code, because this video will just be forever. Oh, one more thing before we do that, over here is the camera. We have a perspective, I think. Yeah, we have a perspective camera. It's set up at a certain distance from what we're trying to look at right here, and then we have this interior camera. Sort of, it's like a RTS object almost a little bit. It's set up to be perspective. It's got the these backgrounds as the sky blocks of, we'll have to play with a lot of that when we get in the stars and what we're going to add in the background or something like that. But anyways, it's meant to be a perspective. Orthographic, I think, would work a little bit better in terms of what we're trying to view, but we eventually want this to be in a 3D sort of view, as we tend to work with a lot nowadays. So, and the camera is a little bit easier in terms of setting it up. Anyway, so oh no, that's the spacer. And there's some reason you click on things and it doesn't open up the file. So okay, so this is the ship interior viewer. It's just a singleton behavior. It just means it's sitting on an object with it's objects with that has links to the prefab and the content and stuff like that. I could maybe get away from that eventually, but anyway, so we have this idea that there's these view areas, which are where it used to be called parts. It might be just views. It's just a standard sort of titled area that we want to add in eventually. So, anyways, you register a view, and then this is just a new view. These are all based on parts, and we sort of switched that around a little bit. Anyway, so it just adds it to the view, and then sets the the tile prefab to inactive, and then it has this flag for if it's rendered, and then it just sets that flag, and then starts the render view, and it just passes in the view area into the enumerator. This is sort of where it gets off a little bit. We're sort of taking the size delta. I didn't talk about this, I suppose, but when we set up these view areas, what's a good one? Oh, the dock view. Anyways, we set it up as the top, holding Alt and Shift, and we set this to the top left. So this is using the anchored position of 4, -4, and then the size delta. So we ask for the anchored position, which is 4, -4, and then we take the size delta. We want to round these ends, so they're, we were doing a scale of 10 at some point, but we switched that around to want to do a scale of 1. It makes it a lot easier for everything we're trying to do. Anyway, so then we find the content position, and then we have to plus and minus the start position, because we want the wherever it is at the 4 to be 4 to 34, and then we also have to minus minus equal to the z, because we want it to go down into the screen because of how it's set up, and then we also take this minus max x minus the max x of this, partly because if you look at the objects here, like the tile viewer, it's 100 by 100, and so this sort of sets it up as 0, 0 to 100 by 100. But then you look at various objects, like the spaceman is set up at 6.5, which is down here, but that's not, maybe that's why he's not working correctly. But anyways, this is his actual correct location, and what he has to do is minus 49.5 and then plus 49.5, and then rotate so he's looking at that current direction. So what we're trying to avoid here is the ability to, if we didn't do some of these calculations, we would get and that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish. We could maybe set this up a little bit differently with different offsets, but what we want to happen is the spaceship is sitting at 0, 0, 0 in the top left corner, and so we're trying to say, well, that's where we're at, so we want the tile here, and then so it just creates, and then down here it's just 30, it should be about 34, yeah, so 33. It might need to be one more, but it's trying to say that because of the, where's this, the dock is 30 by 30. Yeah, so at 4 or 5. So maybe it's not quite accurate in terms of 30 by 30, but eventually we'll get there. But we kind of wanted that to. Anyway, so then we go through here. We did this multiple ways, but anyway, so we instantiate the prefab. We set the prefab. I think in this case we're setting it to true, because we want the prefab to rotate into the object. This is a really frustrating setting for me, because the local and positional and the anchored positions, there's now a local position, a position, an anchored position. It's just getting crazy. Anyway, so at that point, we use the screen point to local point and rectangle, and then we pass it in where we want to go, and we pass in our positions, and then we get the camera. In here we also have to take, I think this is kind of I was thinking this calculation. I think this is because we need to max the, okay, so this calculation right here is because we are, instead of going from 0 to 30 or whatever, we actually have to go to minus 5 to minus 35 in this case. Sorry, messing with my, anyway, so we go from -5 to -35, and then we have to minus it, so the signs are reversed here. We would eventually like to avoid that, but dealing with screen space, you kind of have to go into the screen, and it's very weird. Like, this is 0, 0, and this is some number, but then it's like the bottom left is 0, 0, and then the bottom right is, so it's like a couple different ways to think about the screen. Anyways, once we get down to that, we have to minus, then we get this position, and we have to minus plus equal the total size of, so we have this total scale of 100, 100, and then we should probably set this up as a number, as our canvas scale, or canvas size, and then we actually have to, we should probably take the 100 and divide it by 2, because we need to do the sort of the exact opposite. This is so we can get that number to be within a, because it's like it's centered on the tile, centered on the rect, so we need to push it up into the top left corner. And then we also have to take the minus equal of the offset, because we're trying to get the, we have the negative number, because we're going down, and we need to force this into a positive number to display. This is mostly right here. We set the position based on the new position, so it's right here. So that's the actual position, and then we say the offset position. We could move this down here to here to say this is the view position or something. Oops. For some reason it always happens. This is the view. No, come on. All sorts of problems. What? I swear this keyboard does not respond a lot of times. There we go. I want a new keyboard. Anyway, so it's just the view position. We're just trying to get it so that we can read at 0, 0, 0 is the top left corner, and so forth. And then we do this J++, which is a outside iterator, just to sort of say, as an enumeration function, we want to return every so often to not lock up the screen in case we do something horrible. So this just every 10th tile, it sort of gives Unity a tick of processing power, which I think is honestly very dumb. It's like, why would Unity hand over the entire game that's not even the entire core library to a function and say, hey, go run, and never expect it to return? That seems like completely, like, you would never, I would always have, like, retain. It's anyways, I guess that's a different subject. But same with Microsoft. Why does Microsoft give 100% of the CPU to you? I mean, they don't do that anyways. They have to have some retention, and they need some retention of security and some retention of ability, and it's just like, anyways. So we just have to respond to this of how they are, and a lot of this is because of these complicated math functions that they could come out wrong, and a lot of times do. So we, sometimes we passed in 1376 or 1366 by 768 and told it to scale by 1, which creates a million. What is that? 1366 by 768. Yeah, it creates over a million. Wow, that's pretty impressive. I've probably been playing with that number for a while. So it creates over a million tiles, which is bad, and the game's like dies, and you're like, whoops. Anyway, so once we're done with all that, we basically create these tiles. You can see there's a lot of rotation and positional things that we're still working out. And then so this seems to work out pretty good. This rect utility, basically we're trying to take this point right here in the world. If I can get a hold of this, it's weird that I can't select these objects anymore. Anyway, so it's like this. Well, this is actually the tile object, but we're actually trying to look at this object right here, which is the engine component, and this is the placeholder for the engine component. Well, this rect transform at 0, let's see, where are we at? Right here. This rect transform is saying it's at 0, 0, 0, and a width of 2 and a height of 5. And you can sort of see that it's a width of 2, which is right here. Let's see if I can get a better view on this. That's 1, 2. You can sort of see these tiles are, that's kind of, this is the 1 unit space. And we're just trying to line that up with, like, you can look at FTL. It's sort of like, and this, where's a full screen image of FTL? You can see like these are, it's more like this is a 3 by 3, or a 2 by 2, or some sort of thing like this, or this is a 3. But it's they don't do tiles as much as I do, but I'm very a big stickler for tiles because you want to place objects in rooms and stuff on tiles. And I should have shown Prison Architect or something because it's a little bit more. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. So it's just a 2 by 5. It's sort of, and it matches up with the engine a little bit. You can see it's quite a bit off, maybe based on the scaling, but yeah. And then here on the whole, we just turn. So anyway, so the graphics here is sort of the sipped objects geo, which I think is, yeah, it's just it was meant to be a different test. So what this actually runs off of is this ship right here, which just is you basically need a core, like where are we in the world, and this is just a 00 by 100 by 100. It's the dimensions of our world. And then down here, well, we're talking about the engine. Well, the engine's a 2 by 5, so it's just a view area. So the view area is just it's actually was a ship part, but now you can see that we have these ship parts of non-engine, utility, pilot. So it's like the dock is sort of the dock area. The engine is sort of that engine piece we're talking about right now, and then you have this utility. The utility is probably not a good name for it. I couldn't think of a hole, or it's just sort of meant to be a connection point. How the prefab ship was built, and we have the pilot section. I could split off some of these, like you can see, like their pilot sections a little bit. Like this is kind of considered the whole pilot section, so we could add more rooms, but we're just trying to get down to the basics. Anyway, so we have a graphics object. Some of like the dock doesn't have a graphics object right now, and eventually these could be a list of graphic objects. Anyways, we give it a name, which is kind of meaningless right now, but it sort of gives us some data. And then the ship part type is sort of like this is sort of the this is kind of talking about ship parts, but this also includes the dock, so maybe we need to rename that. We have this inactive, and then we have the content panel is sort of the view panel that we could sort of think about. Content panel is just a generic term I like to, and then we use this idea of is rendered, and then parts and other things need to know their mesh renders and mesh colliders. Anyway, so then we just switch. This is sort of the logic to handle when the part is turned on and off, and we just enable the mesh render and set a timer. This is just so we can not, if you click on something and tell it to disabled, and then tell it immediately the next frame to tell it enable, it sort of flashes. So we're just trying to prevent that flash. Anyway, so we're just going to say if we have a graphics object, we get these mesh render, mesh colliders. The dock, for instance, doesn't have this, but it's meant to be generic. And then whatever this is, we register it through this. This is kind of the singleton pattern I like now, where it's a singleton, which I know that, and it's sitting on it has an instance. So instead of saying, ship interface dot instance dot register view, we just say, hey, we already know that we have to have an instance, so we just eliminate the instance, and then this checks. This should check if instance not equals to null. This should come in here and check the instance as well as a precursor. But technically I've been getting lazy because these are singletons that sort of build themselves. If it's always going to have what it wants. The views could also be a problem if it doesn't run this start. What is it? Does it actually? Yeah, so that could be another problem. Does it not have an on awake? Huh. This actually probably should have a on awake. A public override on awake. I think my on awakes should run because I'm noticing that there's views here, so we need to say instance.views, and then we say equals new. And again, we should probably encapsulate that. But I mean, it should never get to the point where it doesn't have an instance. If it doesn't have an instance, then it's it's a much serious problem. But anyway, so the onAwake should run. I don't think we need to do the base onAwake. This just runs. It's a virtual. So and then the wake calls the onAwake, and then this is actually wow, these are private now. Yeah, you should be private now. This problem with this code base. What? Oh, right. No. This is void. Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Excuse me. There we go. This is part of the game engine library, but it doesn't. On the singleton pattern is just this sort of very basic singleton pattern. It just tries to find it, doesn't find it, creates the object, and then. So this actually should say instance.transform.set as first sibling maybe as well. I've been doing a lot of that lately, but anyway, so when this private awake, I'm hoping that I would like to say this is protected, but I want to make it private because this is meant to be derived from, and this runs the awake, which then calls the onAwake, which is sort of dumb, but then we can sort of run any other stuff in here. Let's see. Yeah. So, anyway, so I don't think we need the onAwake here. But then, anyways, comes in through here. It just sets up the onAwake, set up their internal variables, and then when it starts. This is actually we're trying to be in the view area. Anyway, so that's the same sort of thing. Weird. Anyway, so this is actually a mono behavior, so it's not a mono behaviors are just game objects that sit on very intensive. They have to be like prefabs and intensive things like this. This is the view area, which is kind of like you have, which we talked a little bit about, but these are the the view area this is the engine view area, and then it just needs to say so, and then it just gives you the engine, which is the engine part, and then it's the engine is actually linked to the graphics object, which is right up here. It feels like that is wrong. There we go. So it's someone else's stuff. Oh no, it's your no. Apparently I did something stupid. Oh yeah, I always do that. You can see the colon there. Because I'm holding shift, I do shift that, and that's not. Keyboard's a little. I type too fast for the keyboard to respond. I think. Anyway, so once that's done, so the view area, it just switches out the renderer. It sets everything up. This should actually probably be. I like to have this sort of set up in the way that it's going to run. In theory, and then we just need to cool down. I would like to eliminate this somehow, and then run this this switch logic based on a maybe an anonymous function or something, or some sort of disable this object when within a certain amount of time, because any updates sort of take a lot, and then we could have a ton of view areas. There shouldn't be a ton, but there could be. I could see where we could have like 10 or 15 ships, and multiple docks and a station and tons of other things. Anyway, so that's all that. And then what else? Let's look at the mouse events. Let's see. Yeah, the mouse events are sort of like, you can see that we're trying to do lots of crazy things with the mouse events. It took a long time to get this started to work. And part of it was sort of the idea here. Where are we on time? We good 30 minutes? Oh yeah. Sorry, it's just code heavy projects take a long time to talk about, and mostly for me too. I'm like learning things as I go. But anyway, so we just do a screen point array, taking the mouse positions, pretty standard stuff, and then we do the physics.raycast all at that ray, which is kind of how we run most of our our game logics. This is pretty much our game mouse, and we're just trying to set up um, the 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 camera. We need to link to our camera, because we can't. This one thing we'd like to get away from is I think the spacer, it doesn't link to a camera, so then you have to do this camera, because what the spacer's trying to find is, I guess this could actually do mouse events, find tile, and then pass it in the transform position. Might be a smarter way to do this. And then we just say this right here, because that's all this is trying to do. So that might be a file tile. Yeah, find tile. File the tile! Anyway, so that might be an easier way to do that. And then we could eliminate all this code, and then the mouse events. Mouse events or camera events or something. This is sort of the mouse. Maybe the camera events might be better, but this is sort of, I think of this as like my entire, how do I go from camera to world objects, and that's what this class is meant to be. So sometimes it's called game events in my engine. So anyway, so it's pretty just simple. It just, once we got past all the hard stuff, it was actually, this is kind of how we like to do it. So we just do a raycast, and then we check various scenes. Like this checks the spaceman, and then if based on various scenes, it's does this actually? No, this a different thing actually, a different class. The dock view, it's called the dock view, handles the display, and it just links into that mouse events. This could be this really should be a game game mono. I'm not sure. I don't know. Seems like it's like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, you do. Quit your whining. What's it called then? Oh, I guess I have included some of this, but they're not linked to the you know what? It's probably not. Nah, okay, maybe it's okay. I'm lying. Anyways, yeah, now my code won't compile. Anyway, so where we're getting lost in our own little. Yeah. So anyway, so that's probably something we would really like to do. Set up the mouse events to handle this. This is probably not. I guess you could actually do singleton. There you go. Singleton is sort of the difference there. Like we tried to explain, is the fact that it sits on, and this has no objects that are going to be used to sort of the no preset objects, so we can just run this when the game starts. Anyway, so then there's pretty much the rest of the thing is just setting up things, and then here's the if we have a unit. Oh, this actually sets selecting unit, but right here, if the last area is not equal to null and the mouse button is down, we just apply a switch, and then that's it, and then it just switches out the areas, and then the switch handles the cooldown. And that's sort of tied into a little bit of the this sort of like game events, or sort of like game related. What's the game the game state, I guess, at that point? Like what's the game looking at? The mouse is sort of meant to handle the mouse and clicking and various things like that. But as this is sort of a starter project. Anyway, so that's let's see, will this compile? Probably not. I just meant I broke things. So anyways, that's pretty much the game. You can see it's got a little bit of work to do. I guess that's I think things we were talking about. So anyway, so it's FTL School. This is kind of what we're talking about here. We talked about FTL. We'll see that in a second here. This definitely was a lot code heavier. This is kind of the weekend project we're kind of doing. And then we're going to show there's FTL there. So we demoed the project. And then so we're going to talk about this next step. So why, I know it feels like a lot of work to sort of take an entire weekend off. I could probably have fixed my nodes, or done, improved my nodes, or done something different. Anyway, so one thing I'm thinking about, so but you know, for me, it's like this sort of has a lot of value, and I can sort of play in these various fun little side projects without sort of getting, you know, take the weekend off, basically. Most people like to go to the beach. I just like to code. Anyways, and then I should probably get. I haven't really done any gaming videos in a while, so maybe I should get back into that because there just hasn't really been anything exciting to play or that I'm wanting to do. Anyway, so so there's a lot of next steps with this sort of project. Like one thing that's sort of to think about is that we've sort of created this as the um, dock piece right here is great, but then you can see that the idea is that this is eventually going to be like the ship can pass through this entire thing. So we want to be able to check, and then also the wings as well. We're thinking about putting like a caution strip along this entire path because that's where the ship's will be able to land and move, and then so eventually, so if this guy is sitting here, he better hit the down because I don't think it's pretty low. Anyway, so we're gonna so somehow the fact that we also need to, if this ship was over here, which is kind of where we want it to be eventually, and the other thing too is for this ship doesn't fly yet. So it'd be nice if this ship could fly around the world and take off and do various things, sort of like you know, land, and it's going to land. That's the kind of general idea is the ship is going to land at the dock, you know, kind of like the Orville. It's like you always see the Orville docked at a station. Well, that's kind of what this idea is, that here's the Orville or whatever spaceship, FDL ship docked at a Union Point station, and all these people are going to start working on it or build it or, you know, various ideas for that. The other thing, so one of the next big steps too is this is, I believe this is viewed in the Z direction, and that's why this Y is XY. It's 0, over here is the XY, which is great, but for 2D. But we're actually trying to work in 3D, and our game has the Y in the up position. So we could easily drop in a unit GO, as we've been talking quite a bit about with the last game design with the scriptable objects, and that's sort of like the other thing too, is like that scriptable object demo. Or did we not talk about? I guess that wasn't the previous one. We talked. I think we talked a little bit about, or maybe in the Hamlet game design video. One of those videos we talked about these scheduling systems, and that would be really awesome here. And this is kind of the whole point of why we built this entire project, is to sort of test out that scheduling system. And we'd like to have, you know, various, you know, Resbot is doing that sort of, he's making a space game sort of very similar to this. And we're sort of, this is our take on that, with our sort of our engine. And we, you know, we built the entire scheduling system first and then worked over to his, and then now he's working on like he's working on what would you call it, a schedule system based on RimWorld or something, or any, I think RimWorld is maybe my best example. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. Anyway, so RimWorld, you know, they have a sleep, work, eat, you know, various schedules like that. So we would like to develop AI for the main game to do that as well. So, but anyway, to get that into the main game, we might spend a little bit of time and rewrite this system to sort of, and this does sort of fall back into, this is not the game. It's not the game we're kind of working on, but it would be really nice if we had that access to some of this technology, where it's like, it's not, this is sort of a different, it's sort of the same idea, but instead this is all handled in the UI of the game, which is, I don't know if I made that quite clear, but this is all, I mean, with all the rect transforms and the canvases and cameras and rect transform utility, this is all handled in the UI of the game. So it'd be really cool at some point we could have a UI, you know, like a space UI or something, or, you know, and that's sort of like, how does that happen in a dungeon? But, you know, you have technology or something that you can view, like this is a dungeon level, and you could go and you could view that dungeon level and what's happening on the dungeon level, and then close the screen out and then be at the town. Sort of like, you open up your fancy UI and you can see what's happening other you places. So it's sort of that sort of general idea, and then sort of how to sort of build these sort of interesting systems. Anyway, so that's kind of how it. But in order to do that, I'd have to sort of refactor this into that. This is X and Z, and then Y is the up and down. But that's not the case right now. And also too, I'd like to do a little bit the perspective. It's a little bit bizarre on the perspective, but the camera here, it sort of feels like like these are too, like they're too big. But especially when you look at it from like right here, it's like, why are we this tile right here is like we're off. But you come over here, and it's like you can see why, and then you can over here, it's like what? But anyway, but it's sort of now linked to the area controls the piece, which I think is a much better system. But it's just, and this is just meant to be an abstract. Like I was thinking about armor level 2. Like, is this in sort of piece is armor? In terms, and it's not meant to be like, it's just meant to be a semi view, which is kind of also something really cool I've been wanting to work on for a long time, is this idea that you have this castle, and inside the castle you can look at what's going on inside the castle abstractly. And all sorts of, like, the 100 does sort of some, and then there's Boz, let's say, sort of map battle videos would actually be really cool. And that's sort of like it's all tying this together, is to have these various views of these objects. So it's like, this is the canvas view versus a world view, but this game object right here is actually a ship object, and you could actually can I not go into the? You could actually think of this ship object as a yeah. Oh, there we go. So we can think of the ship object as like that. It's actually, it's at 30, 40, it's at a certain, coordinates, and it can move. I would like to fix this as well. It can move and interact with this world, in the game world. It's just a transform. And then two, it also could rotate as well, which wouldn't make any sense for the game, but for a ship in space, that's actually the pointing forward view. And then we'd actually want to, and then you could see sort of the hull, the engine. Yeah. Anyways, we turn on the engine, but then also too, I'd like to be able to link the UI wherever the ship is. So if the ship is moving and you want to click on, like, so now we can say unpause. I don't think we can, but see, we're interacting with that that area. And it's like, and if we pause, I think hopefully, yeah, so we turned this back off. So then we unpause and we can turn this back on. And then so now so I'd like to tie that, this is really static right now, but I'd like to be able to tie the UI to update, wherever the ship is based on, and at whatever angle as well. So I think it has a lot of potential for being really cool. It took a lot of work to get to this point. It seems like it would be rather easy. You think about this, is just, it seems kind of bizarre that this is so. I don't know why I can't move UI, like that. But anyways, it's like a lot of work to sort of, to tie this. This seems like this should be really easy. I thought about, like, this is just I tried to make this a world view cameras and display the tiles, but then the tiles have no idea where they are in relative to the world. So, it sort of became a problem, but that's kind of eventually what I sort of would have to have, is sort of tiles be built anywhere in the world, and also at any angle as well, so any rotation. So that's probably not, it seems like this would be a lot of work to get all this up and running. So we'll have to see. And this is all actually part of Project Canada as well. If you sort of look at the overall project, Project Canada is now moved into 2019.2. which is awesome. So now we can boot up Project Canada. Yeah, and then just boot right into Project Canada, which is the sort of the Cool 18's Project Caprica. But that's just sort of it. Like, people may start these projects, but if they don't continue on, and then here's our planet view, and then we can actually go into the world view. And then here we go. Here's our ship. Let's see. There we go. So here's our ship now in the world interacting. So maybe now at some point we can actually, this is really not to scale. This is our planets and here's our ships. But anyway, so now we can actually have this ship be interacting. And I was thinking about, man, I'd really like to get these boxes working on the, but that was a little too much work for the thing. But now I'd just like to get the ship to go dock, and then dock, and then you can go, and then you can start clicking on the ship, and or even do it right here where you right click on something. I think this just tells you, yeah, various things. I think left click selects, and then right click tells it where to go. But yeah, and then is there asteroids? Yeah, so we can have eventually. I have to work on. This is kind of like a Diablo clone right now, but I kind of have to. It was just fun and easy to work off, but I sort of have to figure out how to, what I'm doing with this a little bit better. In terms of world scale and things like this. This is meant to be a massive scale project, which is cool. And you could sort of see, I like the RTS elements, but I'm just not a big fan of, what do you know? You bad ship? Oh, sorry, it doesn't look like it's going where it wants to go. Anyways, getting off track here a little bit. Somehow it's not. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, it's the nav mesh agent. Oh, maybe it can't. Oh, yep, that's the problem. This is the nav mesh, so that's as far as it can go, which is kind of, anyway, so that's a pretty good demo of the whole thing, but it's I haven't really worked on any of that, so yeah, so some of the next steps is sort of getting this back into having the Y direction facing up, and then implementing, and then that will allow me to add the unit geo, add navigation to the tiles in that mode, pretty sure, and then make it so you can left click a unit and tell them to run right click on somewhere, and you would actually navigate the path based on the tiles. Like this navigation is is an agent, and I don't like agents. It's like they're limited to what they can see. I mean, there would all have to be tiles there, but those don't have to be visible all the time. But anyway, so that's 35-40 minutes of this 50 minutes of so hopefully it took most of the weekend to get that up and running, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think, to get that up and running. So and then I think we're gonna spend the rest. I don't know what we're gonna do the rest of the summer. We might work on this. We're still kind of, the weekend's still here, and then we're gonna have to get back to Project Hamlet and get moving on that. We've got to sort of get things. I think it's moving along, but it's not quite making as much progress. Anyway, so that's the game design number 11. Thanks very much. I guess we'll talk to everybody next time. You take care.